I was wearing a blue chambray shirt that day. Not navy, not royal blue, but that soft, faded chambray that looks like summer sky through window screens. I had rolled the sleeves up to my elbows because it was August in Tennessee, and the heat sat on your shoulders like a living thing. My jeans had a small tear near the left pocket, and I'd been wearing the same brown leather boots for 3 years. I remember all of this now because Tommy remembers it. Tommy, who fixed my Dodge Dart on August 14th, 1972, and who I ran into last month at a diner outside Knoxville, 52 years later, and who looked at me across a booth and said, "You were wearing a blue shirt, had the sleeves rolled up." I need to tell you about that day in '72 first, because without understanding that day, you won't understand why I sat in that diner last month, with tears running down my face while a 74-year-old man with arthritis in his hands drew me a diagram of my old car's engine on a napkin. I was 23 that summer, just finished a degree in literature that my father called a waste of time, and my mother defended quietly when he wasn't in the room. I had this idea that I'd drive out west, maybe end up in California, maybe write something important. The Dart was a '68 model, pale green, with a temperamental starter and an AM radio that only picked up country stations. I'd bought it for $400 from a guy who said it was reliable, and for 6 months, he'd been right. Then somewhere between Nashville and Memphis, on a 2-lane highway with nothing but tobacco fields on either side, she started making a sound like a cat dying inside a tin can. I managed to limp into this town, barely a town really, just a cluster of buildings around a crossroads. There was a gas station with 2 pumps, a general store, and a garage with a hand-painted sign that said Tommy's Auto Repair. The garage was just a big metal building with the front wall open to the heat. Inside it was somehow even hotter, and it smelled like motor oil and old coffee and something else, something almost sweet, like the honeysuckle that grew wild along the fence outside. There was a car up on a lift, a Ford, and underneath it I could see a pair of legs in navy work pants and scuffed boots. "Hello?" I called out, and the legs shifted, and then this guy rolled out from under the Ford on one of those creeper boards. He was young, maybe my age, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and motor oil smudged on his left cheekbone. He had the kind of face that looked serious until he smiled, and when he stood up and smiled at me, I forgot for a second why I was there. "Help you?" he asked, wiping his hands on a red rag that he pulled from his back pocket. "Car's making a bad sound," I said, and even to my own ears, I sounded stupid. A bad sound, like I was 5 years old. He didn't make fun of me, though. He just nodded and said, "Let's take a look," and followed me out to where I'd parked the Dart in the shade of the building. I popped the hood, and he leaned in, and I watched his hands, which were broad and capable and stained with years of work. He touched different parts of the engine with a gentleness that surprised me, like he was checking a patient for injuries. "When did it start?" he asked, not looking up. "About 15 miles back. Got worse as I kept driving." He made a humming sound, thoughtful, and reached for something deeper in the engine. His shirt, also chambray but darker than mine, pulled tight across his shoulders. I looked away, out at the highway, at the heat shimmer rising off the asphalt. "Your timing belt's about to go," he said, straightening up. "And you've got a couple other things that need attention. Water pump's weeping, brake pads are thin." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and his eyes were this light brown, almost amber in the sun. "You from around here?" "No, just passing through, headed west." Something flickered across his face, too quick for me to read. "It's gonna take me most of the day to fix this properly, maybe into tomorrow morning." My heart sank. I had maybe $60 in my wallet and another 100 in traveler's checks hidden in my bag. "How much?" He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. "Parts and labor, probably $75, $80. I can't really give you a firm number until I get in there." I must have looked stricken because he added quickly, "But I can work with you on payment. Maybe you could help me out around here for a few hours, knock some off the labor cost." I should have been embarrassed, should have felt like a charity case, but the way he said it, casual, like it was the most normal thing in the world, made it feel okay. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I can do that." His name was Tommy Brennan. He was 24, had grown up in this town, population 312. His father had owned the garage before him, taught him everything about engines before dying of a heart attack 2 years earlier. Tommy lived alone in the apartment above the garage, and he worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. He told me all this while we worked that afternoon, him on my engine, me helping where I could, handing him tools, holding a flashlight, learning the names of parts I'd never thought about before. "Why mechanics?" I asked at one point, and he paused, a wrench in his hand, and considered the question like it mattered. "Cars make sense," he said finally. "They break in predictable ways. You can fix them. They don't lie to you about what's wrong." He glanced at me, then back at the engine. "Plus, I like helping people get where they're going. Even when where they're going is away from here." He was quiet for a long moment, especially then. We worked until the sun started to set, painting the sky orange and pink and purple. My shirt was soaked with sweat, sticking to my back. Tommy's face was streaked with grease, and there was a smudge on his neck that I wanted to wipe away but didn't. He made coffee on a hot plate in the corner of the garage, strong and black, and we sat on overturned crates and drank it while the day cooled down by maybe 5 degrees. "You really going to California?" he asked. "That's the plan. Want to write, maybe try to get published." "What do you write about?" It was the question everyone asked, and I never had a good answer. "I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "My mom used to read to me when I was a kid. Steinbeck, Hemingway, all those guys. She had this idea that I'd go to college, become something more than a mechanic." He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "She died when I was 17. Sometimes I think she'd be disappointed." "Are you disappointed?" He looked at me, really looked at me, and the air between us felt suddenly heavy, charged with something I didn't have a name for. "No," he said quietly. "I like my life. It's small, but it's mine." I stayed in the apartment above the garage that night. Tommy insisted, wouldn't hear of me spending money on the motel out by the highway. The apartment was neat, sparse, just a bed and a couch and a kitchen table with 2 chairs. He gave me the bed, said he'd take the couch, and when I protested, he just shook his head and smiled that smile that made my chest feel tight. I couldn't sleep. I lay there in his bed, in sheets that smelled like laundry detergent and something else, something that was just him, and I stared at the ceiling and listened to him breathing in the next room. I thought about California, about the person I was supposed to become, about the life I had planned. And then I thought about a mechanic in a nowhere town who read Steinbeck and fixed cars with gentle hands and looked at me like I was something worth remembering. Around midnight I got up and went into the living room. Tommy was awake, sitting on the couch in the dark, looking out the window at the empty street below. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. "No." I sat down next to him, leaving a careful space between us. "You?" "I keep thinking about something," he said, and his voice was rough, uncertain in a way it hadn't been before. "I keep thinking that you're leaving tomorrow and I'm never going to see you again, and I can't decide if I should say something or keep my mouth shut." My heart was pounding so hard I thought he must be able to hear it. "Say it." He turned to look at me, and in the dim light from the street lamp outside, his face was half shadow, half gold. "I've never met anyone like you, and I know that sounds like a line, like something you say, but I mean it. You walked into my garage this morning and something in my whole life shifted and I don't know what to do with that. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was lean forward and kiss him, and he made this small sound of surprise and then relief. And his hands came up to cup my face, and everything in the world narrowed down to his mouth on mine, his breath, his warmth. We spent that night together, and it was tender and awkward and perfect in the way first times are. We barely slept, just held each other and talked in whispers about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in this town, about being different and hiding it, about the loneliness of being the only one. I told him about my father's disappointment, about feeling like I was running away from something I couldn't name, about being scared that I'd never figure out who I was supposed to be. Maybe you're not supposed to be anyone but who you are right now, he said, his fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. Maybe that's enough. In the morning, my car was fixed. Tommy had gotten up before dawn to finish it, and when I came down to the garage, he was standing next to the Dart, that red rag in his hands again, twisting it like he didn't know what else to do with his hands. "She's ready," he said, "runs perfect." I paid him what I could, and he didn't argue about the rest. We stood there in the early morning light, the air already getting hot, and I knew I had to go. California was waiting. My future was waiting. "Stay," he said so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "Or come back. I know you have to go figure things out, but maybe when you do, you could come back." I kissed him one more time, there in the garage with the smell of motor oil and honeysuckle. And then I got in my car and I drove away. I watched him in the rearview mirror until the road curved and he disappeared. I made it to California. I did become a writer, though not the kind I'd imagined. I wrote for newspapers, for magazines, practical things, useful things. I had relationships, some good, some bad. I built a life. But I never went back to that town in Tennessee, and I never saw Tommy Brennan again. Until last month. I was driving through Tennessee on my way to visit my sister in North Carolina. I'm 75 now, retired, living alone in a small house in Virginia. My hair is white, my hands shake a little, and I need reading glasses for everything. I stopped at a diner for lunch, just a random choice, and I was sitting in a booth working on a crossword puzzle when someone said, "Excuse me, but are you? I think I know you." I looked up, and there was this older man, white-haired like me, with a cane and kind eyes, and it took me a moment, and then everything in the world stopped. "Tommy?" He smiled, and it was the same smile, just wrapped in 52 years of living. "You were wearing a blue shirt, had the sleeves rolled up." He sat down across from me, and we just stared at each other for a long moment, and then we both started talking at once and laughing and catching up on half a century in fragments and pieces. He'd never left the town, never married, sold the garage 10 years ago when his arthritis got too bad. He lived in a small house now, spent his time reading and working in his garden. "Did you ever wonder?" I asked him finally. "Did you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed?" "Every day," he said simply. "Every single day for 52 years. And that's when I started crying, right there in the booth, because I'd spent half a century building a life and never realizing that I'd left the most important part of it behind in a garage in Tennessee. "I should have come back," I said. "I should have come back to you." He reached across the table and took my hand, his grip still strong despite the arthritis. "You're here now." We spent the afternoon together. He showed me his house, his garden where he grew tomatoes and herbs. We sat on his porch and drank iced tea and filled in all the gaps, all the years, all the moments we'd missed. And when the sun started to set, painting the sky the same colors it had been that night in 1972, he said, "I kept something. I don't know why, but I kept it." He went inside and came back with a red rag, faded and stained. the same one he'd been holding that morning when I drove away. "I couldn't let go of it," he said. "Couldn't let go of you. I'm staying in Tennessee now. I called my sister, told her I'd be delayed. It's been 3 weeks, and I haven't left. Tommy and I are taking it slow, figuring out how to be together when we're 75 and 74 instead of 23 and 24. It's different now, gentler, marked by decades of life and loss and learning, but it's also the same. The way he looks at me is the same. The way my heart speeds up when he smiles is the same. Yesterday, we drove out to where the old garage used to be. It's a dollar store now, bland and modern, and nothing like what it was. But we stood in the parking lot, and Tommy said, "Right about here, this is where you were parked. And you rolled out from under that Ford. And I saw you in that blue shirt. Why did you remember what I was wearing?" I asked him. "After all these years, why that detail?" He was quiet for a moment, looking at the place where the garage used to be, where our lives had intersected for one perfect, painful day. "Because I knew," he said finally. "The moment I saw you, I knew you were going to matter. I knew you were going to be the person I measured everyone else against. So I memorized everything, the shirt, the tear in your jeans, the way you stood with your weight on your left leg. I memorized it all because I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life remembering you." I took his hand, threaded my fingers through his. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come back." "You're here now," he said again. "That's what matters." And he's right. I'm here now. We're here now. 2 old men who loved each other for one day in 1972 and never stopped, even through 52 years of silence and distance and separate lives. I don't know how much time we have left. At our age, you think about that. But however much it is, we're going to spend it together. I'm going to learn how to grow tomatoes in his garden. He's going to read the articles I wrote over the years. We're going to sit on his porch and watch the sun set and make up for lost time, even though we both know you can't really do that. You can't get back the years. You can only honor them by making the most of what's left. Last night, I was getting ready for bed in his guest room, which we both know is just temporary, until I'm ready to admit I want to sleep next to him again, and he knocked on the door frame. "I was thinking," he said, "maybe you could write about us, about this. You're the writer. Maybe it's a story worth telling." "What story is that?" "The one about the mechanic who never forgot the guy in the blue shirt. The one about second chances and long roads and finding your way home." So that's what I'm doing. I'm writing it down, all of it, the whole story. Not for publication, not for anyone else. Just for us. A record of what we had and lost and found again. Proof that love doesn't have an expiration date, that it can survive decades of separation and silence, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is go back to the place you left behind and see if the person you loved is still there, still waiting, still remembering what you wore on a hot day in August, when you were young and stupid and too scared to stay. Tommy still has that red rag. It sits on his kitchen counter now, next to the coffee maker. Sometimes I catch him looking at it, and I know he's thinking about that day, about the boy I was, about the man he was, about all the years in between. And sometimes, when he looks at me now, I swear I can see both versions of us, the young men we were and the old men we've become, layered on top of each other like a double exposure photograph. We contain all our ages at once, all ourselves, all our stories. I'm wearing a blue shirt today, different from the one in 72, but the same color. That soft chambray that looks like summer sky. I didn't plan it, just reached for it this morning without thinking. But when Tommy saw me at breakfast, his eyes got bright, and he smiled, and he said, "That's my favorite color on you." "I know," I said. "I remember."